Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Holy Rival Show. I'm your host, and at this point, the only guy holding the wall up for everybody else who wants to take hits at us because of our picks and what we say about realignment and the ACC. We're taking a bunch of hits on Twitter, and I'm the guy holding the tent pole, but I've got a bunch of guys on the team that are keeping that going. And with them, one of the two that are the key is Moen Show is with me tonight. How you doing, Moen?
Doing good, doing good. Got a lot of steam out last night, but I've still got a lot more to go.
Yeah, that was I listened to the whole show after you guys did it, kind of like the boss overseeing what the L's are doing. You guys did a great job, and I really like
Appreciate
that
it.
format. We're going to do more of that format, get back to what we originally started with, but I want to make sure people understand this show is multiple vein. We're a news site. We are information. That's probably the biggest thing we provide. And as far as I'm concerned, unless we say it out loud, I am biased about this. It's as unbiased as I can make it on a YouTube show. So it's information. It's as unbiased as we can make it. You make up your own decision. We'll present the information for you, and that's the way you go. And then it's entertainment. It's fun. We're talking about stuff that none of this is heavy, all right? And I want everybody to make sure they know we're here to provide that fun, but more to be an outlet for you guys to vent like you did last night. We'll be doing more of those shows in the future, but we're not going to walk away from our interviews and our partner shows. I'm trying to get Bob Thompson back on, obviously a friend of the show. He hasn't committed. I asked for him to be on Wednesday. He hasn't gotten back to me, but if that doesn't work, we'll get him sometime in the future. And then on top of that, I've got many other people that I've talked to. I'm hoping to have VC Knoll on the show tonight. He's a Florida State contributor and a creator on YouTube. His site is pretty popular for everybody that's in Knoll land. Florida State got screwed. Everybody knows Florida State got screwed. At the same time, we can also look in the mirror and say, saw it coming, and really wasn't a surprise. Anybody who was surprised about it had blinders on and hasn't been paying attention to the last year and a half of realignment. You could even go 2.5 years. This has been on the board it was just waiting for a perfect storm, and it finally happened this year. Anyway, enough about that. Let me do some shout outs before we get going. We do have a new member in the house. That would be Rock Chalk 94. Thank you very much for being here, Rock Chalk. I'm going to have to look at your membership level. I know you were joined before. I just can't remember what your membership level is. So as soon as I look that up, if you're a founder, I will get out your Big 12 Mafia rally towel. That'll be coming. And if not, if you're just a regular member, then you're going to get all the benefits of having your comments read first, and also some behind the scenes tweets in a collective if I ever get inside information. Anyway, so we'll leave you up there for a while. No, we're not going to let anybody else forget that you joined, and we really appreciate you being here. Casting for Chrome is in the house. He says, I need to start putting in apps for other teams, man. This is rough.
Ohio State, you've already got the call letters. Just put in an app, we'll take you.
I love it. I love it. People trying to find new fandom. It's fantastic. Glenn Lumen, all the way in the Philippines, says, good morning from the sunny Philippines. What a shame about FSU. Sometimes you need to do the right thing and not overthink it. Boy, I wish life was like that. Don't you, Moen?
Yeah, well, when doing what's right and what's profitable, more often than not, profit wins out.
Always does. Kenneth Evans is here. He says, I'm ready for my remediation. He needs some help. Thanks for being here, Kenneth. We'll definitely talk about it. And if you want to be part of the show later, I think we're gonna have some time. We can do some call-ins. So stick around if that's something you want to do. Otherwise, join as a paid member, and your comments will be highlighted to us. Or you can always do a super chat. We read all super chats. And before I forget, because I've done this now twice, 2 times in a row I've been tricked, and there was 2 super chats that happened after I closed the show out. And let's see, it was Blaze Barstow, who is a UT fan, so he's happy in
He's
technology today. And he gave me 2 super chats for $1.99 a piece. Sorry I didn't catch him while we were still on, Blaze, but there you go. There's your credit, and I'm very grateful for you being here for it. Oh, wow. Sergeant Pickles already banging in the house. Let's see this. He comes in and he says, boom, down to Washington. Ooh, I can't wait. Let's go, Pickles. I'm going to get.
an undefeated conference champ that got in.
Isn't that the truth? I cannot wait to. I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy a UW jersey. I'm taking suggestions for who that number might be. You got Brunel. You have the Huards. You have my personal favorite is or let's see, what's his name? Not Entz. I'm spacing it.
Ertz.
No, it's not Ertz. Defensive lineman. Oh, come on. Pickles, tell me who I'm forgetting, please. Anyway, there's several. There, Corey Dillon is another one. You could go with any of the current players. Anyways, they all matter, and I'm going to be wearing a jersey for the rest of this month, cheering on my University of Washington Huskies. Thank you so much for the super chat. Oh, Cortez Kennedy. Yep, Steve Entman is who I was thinking of. But
Empman. Okay.
yeah, thank you, Casting for Chrome. He says Cortez Kennedy too. Yeah, he was another one. Yeah, what's his? I'm hearing this from Sergeant Pickles says, "Bow down, come on, bomber."
Yeah, you said boom down. So
Oh, bow down. I'm sorry. I bow down to that. How about that? Sorry, I read that fast. Bow down to Washington. My bad. Sort of ruined the drop. I'm sorry about that, Pickles. Anyway, thank you so much for your super chat. We will take that money and I'll put it to the cause of buying a jersey. Anyway, let's see if we can get some more people in before we get started. So Glenn Lumen is here. Kenneth Evans is here. Let's see. It's Cleveland Rocks is in the house. Another one of the paid members to the show. He says did a great job running the show yesterday. Moen, he's tipping that to you.
thank you.
Also, sorry, go ahead.
I guess thank you. I can't take all the credit. Immaculate did most of the heavy lifting. I was just trying to keep up.
It's hard running these live shows.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard. People don't think it's very difficult. I take probably 3 hours a day and put time into doing this. I know the other guys put at least a couple hours in every day to provide this show for you guys. So all of your super chats, they're not even coming close to totally paying us back if we cared about our dollar rate. We don't. We're here out of passion. We're here to give you some of our time and what we've gleaned so we can save your time in the future. You can go to Twitter and be immediately caught up after you watch this show. That's what we try to do here. All right, let's keep going. Summit Hawk, another one of our paid members, says, is realignment back on for FSU screw job after
Absolutely.
FSU screw job?
Yeah, absolutely. Get ready.
Keep going. Give us some more of that,
It's
Moen.
it's soon. Soon. Like before the end of the year soon.
And why do you feel that way? We're going to get into more detail, but let's flesh that out in
I
just a minute.
I won't get into specifics, but Florida State getting screwed over out of the playoffs. Boosters are writing checks right now. Boosters who are pro SEC are now saying, "How do we get into the Big Ten?" The Big Ten is saying, "Come on over. Let's get you in here. Let's get our team in Florida. Let's have our jewel of the South, Florida State. We won't lose you in the shuffle." And you better believe if a Big Ten team got treated the way Florida State did, the Big Ten wouldn't stand for it. It would not have been a harshly worded response. It would have been every team in the Big Ten given a big number one. I won't do the real number one, but given a big number one, saying we're not playing we're not going to a bowl game. You're going to have the bowl games without the Big Ten, because that's the right thing to do. Unfortunately, Jim Phillips and the ACC wouldn't do that.
We're going to flush that out in greater detail later and in the coming weeks.
Yes.
The point is that Florida State's already done all the legwork. They've already done all this heavy lifting. So this is not new for them. It's basically turnkey. They needed an excuse and they needed media support for the public. Now they're a victim and they're darlings, which means
Yes.
they're going to get all of the advantages. And I said this in a tweet today. Conspiracy theory number one. I think that might have been this whole thing in the back room. I could see in a back room in Tallahassee, top floor of an old shopping center, smoking cigars, and guys talking about how do we make Florida State more sympathetic? How do we get people wanting to spend money to have them jump $250 million maybe to jump to the Big Ten or the SEC? What's the easiest way to do that? You create them as the victim of a horrible story. 13-0, first P5 to ever be left out. A
Right.
champion, sorry, third champion to be left out. My bad. There have been others that have been left out in the past, but they weren't champions of their league. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, but I smell conspiracy. It would be a JFK type thing if they pulled it off. I'll tell you that. Summit Hawk, giving us, he's also a paid member. He's saying, giving us $20 to say, keep up the great work. Rock
Thank
Chalk.
you.
You want to
Here
do
we
some
go.
Jayhawk? There we go.
Jayhawk squawk.
There we go. I love it. Caden's dad, I just had this pulled up. Moen and Immaculate did a great job last night. Big Toe Mafia was in good hands.
Thank you very much, Caden. I appreciate the positive feedback. I've
I've
been
heard
talking to him a little bit on X.
I've
We've
heard
got some,
nothing but good.
yeah,
Nothing but good.
we've
Let's
got our
see.
own conspiracy theories going on between the two of us. So,
Okay, well, we can flush those out later, maybe. Let's see. Raider Vision says going to be interesting to see if this really speeds up changes for the ACC. Raider Vision's also one of our paid members. Thank you for being here, Raider Vision. By the way, if you didn't know and you're new to this channel, please subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and turn on your notifications on both Twitter and on YouTube. The notifications piece is so important. Otherwise, you don't get the reminders about our shows. Anyway, I think that and being a sorry, I got distracted there. Being a paid member means I'm going to highlight those comments before I get to any others. Sorry, I needed to get that out. Raider Vision, he's a Texas Tech guy, and the end of the season didn't go the way they wanted it either. Um, I think if we're down in Texas and guys that are 3 and 4 points separated for what's going on in the ACC is talking about it, it's a big deal, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. This affects everything. It's a lake, and as soon as you throw a pebble, that ripple hits everything. So, um, this is a really big deal, guys. I don't. This really, really, really speeds up the ACC process here. I'm sure the ACC has a figure. Jim Phillips has already said if some teams want to go, they can go. So they have a figure. ESPN has a figure. It's all about getting that money together for them. Which brings up this comment from Daniel Gygax. Where do you get that kind of money? Well, your boosters, one. Two, and I've proposed this before, Big Ten could just give them loans. And they're just forgiving loans that, hey, it's a 20-year loan where we're going to help you buy your way out of the ACC to join the
And let
Big
me
Ten.
interrupt you there, Moen. You've
Yeah.
actually said in the past that those loans could potentially be forgiven by the
Yes.
conference, right?
Yep. Hmm.
So that
You got
just
to make an
enables
invest.
more,
Yeah, you got to
right?
make an investment in your conference. So it's going to
Right.
be everybody's going to have to step up and take a little less money, but you're investing in your conference, getting the best brand out of Florida. That's a huge investment.
And 500 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you stretch it out over 20 years, it's not near the
Right.
impact that you're
Yeah.
imagining. And these contracts they're signing just to buy Florida State as an entity, if the media member wanted to buy the university as a media entity, they could probably get it for I don't know everything top to bottom in the barrel. I would say 100 million, 120 million, something like that. the rest of that money is an investment. It's like putting it into a hedge fund. You're investing in yourself and the growth of the conference. So anyway,
Absolutely right.
Cleveland Rocks here with another paid member. Thanks for being here, Cleveland Rocks. He says, Moen, who does the Ohio State try to get at quarterback? Yeah, your quarterback just went into the portal. Cam Ward, maybe. Also, Lincoln Riley was in Manhattan, Kansas this weekend recruiting Will Howard. I reposted a link that said he was. Was that a rumor? Do you know?
I don't know about Lincoln Riley. Cam
Okay.
Ward is the number one target for Ohio State right now.
Okay. All right.
And what happened was Ryan Day had a meeting with Kyle this weekend and let him know they were going to be looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal.
Very
Um,
good.
he offered to let Kyle stay and compete for the job, and Kyle didn't want to do that, which is understandable. He's a third year guy, so I want to wish Kyle McCord. I've given him a lot of stuff for some of his quarterback play, but I do want to wish him well. Hopefully, he catches on somewhere and is able to maximize his potential.
Sorry, I'm sending out another reminder on Twitter. I got to get back to that. I agree with you about Cam Ward. I think he's big shot bound somewhere. I wouldn't even put it out of realm that Alabama or even Clemson or FSU could
Right.
go for him.
Well, you got to look at Ryan Day's track record as far as
Yeah,
quarterbacks into the NFL. It's been pretty good the last two quarterbacks put up there.
right. Very fair. Billy Tuesday, welcome here, Billy Tuesday. Good to see you. What's the current per team payout in the ACC?
I think it's 40 something,
I thought it was
and it's
50,
on a
but
yeah, it's on a sliding scale.
can you explain that a little bit so everybody knows what you're talking about?
Every year it goes up. It goes up incrementally every year, so it's on a sliding scale. Um, so they make less money. It's almost just like a mortgage payment. You got principal and interest and everything else. So by the time it's all said and done, they'll be at 65 million, I believe. And that's at the end of the 20-year cycle, which you can imagine with inflation what 65 million in 2036 is going to be worth. By that time, the Big Ten and the SEC will probably have negotiated 2 new media deals in the same time frame that they have one. So that's why they've got to get out.
And it changes over time too, right? Because the longer it goes, the value actually it does reverse. It goes up and not down.
Yeah, yeah, it goes up, but it doesn't take into account that these other teams are going to be getting more media money with new media deals.
No, it doesn't. And also that's future, right? That's
Yeah,
future revenue. We're talking about what they can get right now, and
yeah.
that's a big deal. So, yeah, anyways, I love it. Thank you so much for that. Let's go to get a few more comments in here. This is getting crazy, by the way. Casting for Chrome says playoff committee's decision to favor Alabama over Florida State in the college football playoffs is expected to save ESPN an estimated $150 million. That just takes your breath away.
Well, it also might cost ESPN hundreds of millions down the road if they just drove Florida State into the Big Ten's arms.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is a possibility. It's the Big Ten put up a big wall August 8th, something like that, and said no, not right now. But this dynamic is completely blown up with Florida State, similar to what happened with Colorado. Now the field is completely wide open again.
Yes, the gates have been lowered. We will take more teams.
Yeah, very good. Casting for Chrome says that was in Bleacher Report. Thank you very much for giving credit there, Casting for Chrome. We want to give credit to other creators. We generally don't make news, but we do try to fairly report it. Let's see. Caden's dad, again with Florida State, says FSU is done with the SEC. Don't piss down our backs and tell us it's raining. Yeah, I don't know about that. I still don't. I still believe the SEC is where they're going to be, but I could be wrong. I'll probably be wrong. Let's say that. All right. Coy is here. He says Sergeant Pickles, yes, MHJ deserves to be a candidate. I'm not sure who
Yeah,
that is.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh,
And
Marvin
and
Harrison,
I'm going to
right?
tell you right now, If you doubt that, talk to the NFL scouts who scouted him at CJ Stroud's pro day last year. He drew comparisons to Calvin Johnson, which is pretty damn good. I'd say he's probably the best wide receiver prospect coming out of college in the last 5 years. And that's saying something with some of the receivers that have come out. With Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson coming out, Marvin Harrison Jr. is on that same level.
How we doing, Vince? Sorry to interrupt you there, Moen. I just wanted to give him a
Right.
clap coming into the shop here with us. How you doing, Vince?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Good evening. Good evening, Nathan. Good evening, Moen. How are you? I was just
Doing all
I was
right.
just on Moen's show last night, actually, a little chat action.
Yeah.
Very good. Oh, you were on the night. You were on the Sunday show. Hey, how
Yeah,
did you
I
like
was in
it?
the chat.
He
I
just
was in the
popped
chat. It was
in
good.
Did they do a good job or a bad job? I'm
Oh, no.
evaluating them.
Fantastic job, as usual, right?
That's exactly right.
There's very little competition.
Yep.
How about that?
Yep, I agree. Well, two things before we get started. First, welcome back. Last time we saw you, I think it was in early September, and then we
Yeah.
had this crazy season, and it was an absolutely crazy season from start to finish. And even the finish was crazy when Auburn should have beat Alabama.
Yeah.
Georgia should have lost to Georgia Tech. Maybe not should have, but could have. These are games that nobody could have. Both schools were overlooked. They got through them, but they were wounded warriors, and yet, Florida State, who was a self-professed wounded warrior, and told everybody about it, is the one that's actually punished. Tell everybody why that's wrong.
I mean, it's obvious why it's wrong, right? And no one's going to cry for Florida State. I get it, right? We're all fans, and until it happens to your team.
Yes.
But, if you think about it, it's an unprecedented thing that happened. And to be honest with you, from a personal standpoint, I was shocked. People were asking me, "What's your confidence level?" And I would tell people, and I've been telling people for a month and a half now or more, if they went out, they're in, because that's what happens. And it didn't happen. And conspiracy hats on. We all know what drives it. We all know what drives it. So, but like I was saying to you a little bit ago, when you called me and asked me if I wanted to come on, the main thing is I'm upset for the team, right?
Right.
I'm upset for those guys that worked hard, did everything that was asked of them. Even more so, when Ryan and I started the season out, we were giving our thoughts on the team. We're like, what do you think the ceiling is? And we thought the ceiling was 12-0. We did. But that was like pie in the sky. Like I was more of the 10-2 variety.
Well, that LSU road trip looked daunting.
Yeah. And the Clemson, we hadn't beaten Clemson in I don't know how long, right?
Right.
So, but then the season plays out, and no matter how you look at it, wins are wins. And that's the thing. That's the thing I always come back to. And, I try not to get involved in hypotheticals, right? But that's what everybody talks about. That's what the committee talked about. They basically said that if Florida State were to get into the playoff, we don't think that they could compete. What does that even mean? So, as a fan, as a streamer, as someone who follows the program religiously, it's just a shame. It's just a shame.
Moen.
Yeah, I'll second what Vince said, but I will add this in.
Man, this is some bullshit.
That's what I was saying yesterday. I said it on the show last night. I was full hot. Wasn't even my team, but the argument that they have a backup quarterback shouldn't even come into consideration. Ohio State won a national championship with their third string quarterback in 2014, the inaugural season of the CFP. They are 13-0. They were conference champions, undefeated. End of story. That's the end of story. They should have been in over a one-loss team that needed a 4th and 31 miracle against Auburn who had lost to a G5 school the week previously. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no argument you can make to me that says that Florida State should have been left out and Alabama should have been let in.
And yet, I was not surprised at all. In fact, we did our pre-show, we did our Friday Pick'em show, and I said as much. Then we were discussing who are the Final Four going to be, and I said if Alabama wins, I was actually thinking it would be Georgia. Instead, it was Texas.
Right.
But they both were going to be in over Florida State. And I will admit, one of the reasons I put, not the main reasons, but one of the main reasons I mentioned was the quarterback being down. But let me replay or take everybody back to, say, August 4th. And your quarterback, your brilliant, was he freshman or sophomore quarterback that got hurt, was doing an amazing job. He's going to plan and be the greatest guy all season long. But then he drops in late October, early September, gets maybe a concussion that's only supposed to last a day or so. Everything after that, you could keep saying he's day to day. He's day to day. He's day to day. It worked for Utah. It kept Utah in the top 25 the entire season because they didn't tell anybody what was going on with Cam. So, do you think that would have been a better way to go than completely transparent saying, yeah, he broke his leg in 18 pieces? I'm making this up, but he's so hurt that he won't be coming back in 08 last week. We lost our backup.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, but if anybody watched that game and saw Jordan Travis's foot turning one way and the rest
Right.
of his leg turning the other way, I mean, the CW made sure to show that over and over and over again.
Yikes. Okay.
There's no way you could have, blanketed that and say he's day to day. It just wasn't going to happen. And to Mike Norvell's credit, from an NFL perspective, from a prospects perspective, I don't care what anybody thinks of Jordan Travis and whether they think he's an NFL quarterback or not. That doesn't matter because the kids are going to try no matter what. So Norvell basically, calls it quits right there to make sure, the league's aware and whatever his prospects are, right? So you're not going to day-to-day that. And, but yeah, you're right. And Jordan even said this. He tweeted this out or X'd this out, whatever it is now. He basically said, I wish that I had broken, think how ridiculous this is. I wish I had broken my leg earlier in the season.
Yep.
So everyone could see what this team is really made of. How unbelievable is that? That's what this, The Bachelor, which is pretty much what college football playoff has become. What The Bachelor it's like that's it. Can we get a rose? I want a rose. It's a pageant now, and we all kind of knew that, right? We all kind of knew that. But again, I keep saying it's a shame, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. So here we are.
I think that's very fair. Another question that was outstanding, and that is 3 years ago, BYU was undefeated and Coastal Carolina was undefeated. They threw a game together with 3 days' notice and played.
Yeah.
What is stopping them from creating a quick play-in game?
Yeah. I mean,
If Alabama is the team they picked, they have to stand by it now because they published all their votes, so they can't change it to Georgia. If they're fighting for that fourth thing, why not just do a game on December 15th?
Hey, I mean, the thing about, I'm sure there's a lot of logistics that go into all that, right? But the main thing is that if you were to ask Florida State, this is the way that's always been ever since Bobby took over the show. Anytime, anywhere, anybody. Florida State didn't back down from anybody.
Right.
It's just, it's not anything that Florida State would be opposed to, except for, that's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen.
That just frustrates me because I think if we project to next year, people are playing games on December 15th. They're the first round of the playoffs.
Well, to be fair, there's no need for a play-in game. Florida State deserved to be there.
Okay, but
Um,
that's true. I'm just saying you can't say it's a process issue because next year they're going to have a game in probably the exact same date that's going to be part of the playoff tier.
I don't
So I'm just,
disagree, but a
yeah,
playing game is just how many hurdles do we have to put in front of Florida State?
I don't what they used to. If you were to go to the coach right now and say, "Hey, man, we're playing, and on the 15th they gave us a game to beat Alabama to join the thing," you think Alabama, you think FSU wouldn't be
I'm sure they
run into the
would,
buses?
but why does Florida State have to prove itself for a 14th game?
I'm not saying they do.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Obviously
saying.
the
I'm
playoff
just
committee does.
right.
That they absolutely would. The team thrives on adversity, and they've had their share of it. So it would be nothing different than anything else that's gone on
Right.
this year. So, but going back to whether it's right or it's wrong, as a fan and somebody who covers the program, I'm intimately familiar with people in the program and people around the program. And to watch something like that, it takes some of the innocence away. And we can all say, well, what are you innocent? You should know about this. But they didn't lose a game. They did not lose a game. It didn't matter what hand was dealt to them. They didn't lose a game. And did it look pretty all the time? No. Alabama didn't look pretty all the time.
Sorry, go ahead.
Alabama didn't look pretty all the time. Texas didn't look pretty all the time. Georgia didn't look pretty all the time. I believe, and I believe this from the beginning, and Ryan and I talked about this on our show, Garnet and Old, that we didn't believe there was an elite team in the fray this year. And I still believe that to this point. There is not a singular dominant team in this fray. So for anyone that says, and I've seen a lot of this, we were all saved, the embarrassment of Florida State getting hammered in a playoff game. My response to them is always fortune telling is a profitable business, right? Line it up and see what happens. Sports is determined by points and winners and losers. All Florida State did this season was win. Not many teams can say that.
So, do you feel it's at all ironic that the words you just said have been said in the past? Utah, TCU, UCF, BYU for decades. You don't think that's ironic?
It's not ironic to me
Okay.
personally as a college football fan, because I've never been the type of fan that's back here going, only our club gets in and no one else. I've never been that type of fan.
Right.
I've always had a soft spot, if you want to call it that, for teams that are doing what's expected of them. And you can only play the people that are on your schedule.
That's been the argument. Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do. And Florida State, again, I want to say is new, but is relatively new to the blue blood life, whatever you want to call it, right? While they've had immense success, it's been in a short amount of time. But let's face it, we are not considered old guard.
Right.
No matter what
not a
Florida
blue
State
blood.
fans,
Yeah.
no matter what Florida State fans think. Now, are we a premier institution? Sure.
Yes. Elite, I
Is
would
the
say.
program
Yeah.
is the program elite? Is
Yeah.
it considered that? Yes.
Yeah.
But just look at the old guard. Just look at what happened. Just look at what happened.
Moen, do you have a follow up?
No, I would say I agree with that. FSU is more of a new blood than a blue blood, but they're on their way. I mean, they've got national titles within the last 25 years or so. So
I think blue blood is that's baked in. I think there are no more blue bloods.
I think you can earn your way into it.
I don't think
Well,
you can.
I mean, it's longevity. It's
Yes.
history, right? And do we have history? Yes, but our history starts, our legitimate, kick-ass history starts in like the late 70s.
Right.
Where a lot of these other programs have been playing football since the mid 1800s.
Right. Right. That's all I'm
And
saying. What you're saying,
yeah,
I'm agreeing with that.
as a fan, I'm very proud of the way that meteoric rise happened, right? And
Right.
I take great pride in that, in being able to say to my rivals that are more rational, "Hey, we have as many titles as, I quote unquote titles because it's never been a playoff ever,
Right.
quote unquote titles as you do, and you've been playing football 100 years longer or 50 years
Right.
longer than we have." But that doesn't change the fact that people, the programs and the old guard that have been doing this a lot longer, um, it's tough to get in the club.
Really is. And there's a lot of schools that want to get in. And there's several I left out, by the way, not on purpose, but Boise State, Tulane's had an undefeated season. There's been a bunch. And it very much is a club. You use the right word. It is a club. And you have to get the special pass key to join. That's the only
Yeah,
way. You have to be invited in unless you can write a check for $2 billion and then you can get in for
yeah.
you know, $5 or something. Anyway, so I think that's really cool. I think unless do you have any more Florida State specifics? I want to go to the ACC, Moen.
No, we can move right on to the ACC
All
because
right. So now
that's
let's
the exciting thing that's
okay.
actually going to happen because of this. There's got to be a silver lining to this gray cloud.
I wanted to give Vince a chance to vent. That's all. So more people are
No,
seeing you.
yeah. I mean, as far as venting is concerned, I'm frustrated,
You should
right?
be. I
I'm
think you should
frustrated,
be. Yeah.
and I always say to people that say cry me a river. Nobody's crying for Florida State. Shoe on the other foot, everybody would understand, right?
Right.
But
Absolutely.
when it's not your team, and it's just it's the way college football is. So I get it. I
Right.
get that we're going to get ribbed for it. I get that.
All right, let's move on to the ACC then. By the way, I want to add. I'm adding banners now as much as often as I can remember. I put in banners. Welcome to the show, VC Knoll from the Garnet and Old Show. So take a second and tell everybody what Garnet and Old is, Vince.
Garnet and Old, just from a history perspective, we're about 3.5 years going now. My co-host and I, Ryan, Big Papa East, started doing the show just as fans. And the nutshell story of it is Ryan and I used to work side by side in the office, and people got tired of hearing us talk about the team, and they said, "You should do your own show." And that's literally how it started. But we have a weekly show Thursday nights at 7 p.m. It's obviously mostly Florida State stuff, but it also gets into conference stuff. It also gets into other sports, not just football, right? So we've done realignment stuff. As a matter of fact, you guys, that's how we got hooked up with you guys when all the realignment stuff started to happen.
Right.
So
Of course. Yeah.
Thursday nights at 7 is our weekly show, but we also do pregame and postgame shows during the season.
Awesome. I'm glad I wanted to give you that time to explain what you
Appreciate
do
it.
and where you're from. Of course, always. Okay, let's talk ACC. And I know you're probably on a timer. When you have to go, if we're in the middle of something, just say, "Hey, I gotta go." Okay. So
Yeah, sure.
there's certainly no requirement to stay here for any amount of time.
I'm good. Let's do
So
it.
the ACC, you and I and Moen, and there was a small cadre of us that had been talking for a long time about what was going to happen once the Pac-12 sorted itself out. Well, that's pretty much happened. The only thing that hasn't been finished is the settlement, which they're still going to be working on in May. That may go years. But the bottom line is Washington State and Oregon State are not going into a P5 program, at least not right now. So looking ahead, at the time you had said that you thought Florida State, there were all signs saying that Florida State was going to either the SEC or the Big Ten. Colorado left. The Pac-12 blew up. There was a week there where you thought there might be some movement, and then nothing happened. You and Ryan were very frustrated. Jump us ahead now. We're 4 months later. Catch us up. Where are we at? Where's Florida State at on the realignment wheel?
Yeah, I don't think the trajectory has changed, right? There's no love lost between the ACC and Florida State from the very beginning. To be honest with you, from the very beginning in 1992 on, there's just none. So it's been known for a long time that Florida State their best chance to continue on and be competitive is out of the league. And so the wheels have been turning toward that. And we all know, people that watch your shows know that it's not as simple as, we're leaving, right? There's a lot of dollars involved, and there's a lot of minutia that has to happen. And there's probably court cases that are going to happen. But the trajectory hasn't changed. I can tell you one thing that has changed in the last 36 hours is if the fire had only been simmering, while the season was going on, that fire is full on rage right now. You saw with the college football playoff what happened when, the committee chairman, who is an ACC athletic director, let what happened occur. If that's not the biggest indicator that your conference is not looking out, I mean, what is a conference even for if you're not looking out for your members? So the writing was already on the wall. Now it's got like spotlights on it. And we were saying that there might be some more information coming out at the end of the regular season. I'm more inclined to think that now, actually.
Okay.
Have I heard anything specific at this point? No, I haven't. But you can tell some of the tea leaves sometimes when people you follow on social media that have some kind of inner workings, and if you follow them enough, you kind of know that they're giving you little nuggets here and there, right? Because they can't really say anything.
And Ryan's done the same thing, right? Ryan has tipped his hat a little bit,
Absolutely.
and so I want people to follow you guys on Twitter so that they can find out and actually get it from the horse's mouth. And please be very careful where you're getting realignment news from, because there's very few outlets, and I can name them probably 5 on one hand, that don't taint the information. They don't
Yeah,
try
it's
to
true.
steer you toward an answer. They present it, throw the thing in the air. They'll give their opinion, but they say it's their opinion, and then you can decide what you want to do on your own. You agree with that, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the way we kind of present it. If we know
Right.
something, we're gonna give you that information. We're never gonna say this is lock stock, this is gonna happen, because
Right.
even things that we were pretty sure were gonna happen last August, there's always that caveat that something can get thrown in the mix.
Right.
But Florida State is not long for this league. And the only question is when, and that's no different than we said in August. The only thing I can say and now is that the momentum is sped up because, when someone tells you who they are, you have to believe them.
Right.
And we've been told multiple times, like literally on national TV, who they are.
It's very frustrating. Moen.
What would you put the odds on the Big Ten now?
Higher, actually. Higher.
What would that number be, Vince?
I would probably say, this is me now. Again, I'm going to give you a caveat. This is me. I'd say 70%.
Over the SEC.
Over the SEC.
Okay.
I think a lot of bad blood occurred on Sunday.
Yeah, right.
Tons of bad blood.
ESPN burned a lot of bridges. Not just
And they
Florida
feel-
State's, by the way. Not just Florida State's. They burned a lot of bridges across the ESPN universe, because now everybody knows in the ACC, ESPN's going to always take the SEC side. The ACC is always going to be the stepchild. That's got to be a warning to the entire conference.
You would think so. But, and I follow a lot of accounts from other schools in the conference. Crickets. So what do we deduce from that? I don't know.
I think they're fearful. I think they're scared.
It could be. FSU is not
just
going
to give you some history.
Yeah, go ahead.
Utah did the exact same thing. Sorry, I'm doing that too much. I'll shut up.
No, you're good.
All this stuff's in my head, and if I don't say it, I'm gonna forget it. Utah, the experience you're talking about, crickets, nobody talking, that happened. All this happened at Utah. If Ute was here, he would say that's exactly what happened at Utah. They quit talking. It took me 6-8 months to find somebody that would even talk about doing a show that's a Utah guy, because nobody wanted to talk. They wanted to stay silent and just keep their heads down, and they were hopeful that the big guys would keep the thing together. And it ended up exploding. So if you're a Wake Forest guy, if you're a Boston College guy, if you're a Syracuse guy right now, if I was in your shoes, I would do what Oregon State and Washington State didn't do, and I would be lobbying the Big 12 right now. I would be pre-lobbying and saying, if this goes really bad, will you give us a home? And will you give us a home because we're the first ones that reached out to you. If you're just sitting back and not being proactive, in my opinion, you're going to pay a big price. Okay, Florida State again. Sorry.
No, I mean, you're right about that. And that's been the problem with this league from the very beginning, is they've been very passive about these kind of moves, and thinking that, we live in a fantasy world where the conferences are all just going to play nice together. And that's obviously, I tweeted something the other day about the Pac-12 got assassinated this past year, just completely cut to pieces, and there's no honor among the thieves. It's just so you better start planning for what's next, because the ACC taking SMU, Cal, and Stanford. Total reaction. It's total reactive. That wasn't anything other than like, we needed some kind of life preserver. There was no benefit to doing that other than a panic move.
Moen.
I don't disagree that it was completely reactive. And I think the ACC, you said it really passive. It has been completely passive.
Yes.
Even in Jim Phillips' statement yesterday, it was a harshly worded statement that wasn't even really that harshly worded. It was, well, we're disappointed.
Right. What are they going to do to ESPN? What can they say about ESPN?
Why don't you stand up for yourself and say, hey, this is some BS, and we're not going to let our other teams in the conference play in your bowl games. Fill those with G5 schools. Take the loss of revenue. Take a principled stand to protect your conference. You basically just kind of rolled over and said, hey, do with us what you will. SEC is going to be the favored child. Whatever you say, we'll just keep licking your boots.
What do you think about the fact, and this is something that you mentioned, Vince, at the beginning of the Florida State championship game with Louisville, you found out who the commentators were going to be, and you got Jesse Palmer, who just happens to be the host of The Bachelor. So you're talking about schools that are auditioning for The Bachelor and being picked? Isn't it funny that he's the one who called that game? I mean, you can't make that. You couldn't put that in a book and people would believe it.
Yeah, it's a reality show, and it's not sour grapes, though, at least from my perspective, because I'm calling the college football playoff the pageant, the college football pageant, but I've been doing that for years.
Yeah,
it's not something that's new just because Florida State got left out.
right.
It is, and the people that control that, it's all about ratings.
Sure.
It's not about, and I'm not naive. They have to pay bills. I get it, but it's not a playoff. Let's not call it that. Let's call it invitational. They invited the teams that they thought they were going to draw the most eyeballs.
Right.
So, but nobody's going to say those words. That's the part, I consider myself a stand-up, human being.
Right.
That's the part I say, if you're gonna call it, if this is what it's going to be, just come out and say it.
That's what
Let's not pretend.
That's what Mike Leach said 6 years ago at Washington State. He says this is not a playoff; it's an invitational. That's a quote. So, Prophet Mike Leach, who had a lot of problems, personal issues, knew what this was when he saw it originally. So
think about this.
Go ahead.
It's not like less people would watch it if they called it the invitational.
Right.
People are going to watch it. they are going to watch it, and they're going to watch a ton of it. But calling it a playoff and a national champion has never been true, right? Every title that everybody has is a manufactured trophy. Like it is, because it's not it's not equal access for everyone.
It's not an NCAA basketball tournament.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even that, I mean, it's much better, obviously, because there are 68 teams or whatever that get in. At
Right.
least there's a larger contingent that have the possibility to get
How
in
many
there.
leagues?
And
That's like 40 leagues, right? Isn't it something like 40
yeah,
leagues that get access to that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the conference stuff. Go ahead.
Let me get a couple super chats out here. First, Blaze Barstow, who's one of our Texas fans. Good luck, Blaze. I'm a Husky, so I'm going to be cheering against you on December 31st. But glad to have you here on the show, and you've become a welcome contributor to the membership, and I really appreciate that. And by the way, I shouted out your other two super chats, which you did after I closed the last two shows. So I want to make sure I'm giving you credit for those super chats. Anyway, he says, would have an expanded playoff in 2022 if not for the big. Do you guys dispute
I
that?
want to call some stuff on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Big wasn't negotiating with Bob Bowlesby to expand the playoffs while he was also backroom dealing with Oklahoma and Texas.
Right.
What the Big did was in reaction to the Oklahoma-Texas move. So, I mean, I know a lot of people have brought this up over the last 2 days since the, selection committee show. But yeah, no, this is revisionist history where everybody acts like that didn't happen, that Greg Sankey didn't do that. Greg Sankey sat in a room with Bob Bowlesby and came up with a playoff format that he knew would benefit his conference among all other conferences while he was poaching their top two brands from them and leaving their conference for dead.
Right.
And so
Go
think
ahead, Vince.
about that. Think about that. Do I fault Greg Sankey for trying to position his conference in the best possible light? No, because that's what he is tasked to do. The other conferences, ACC in particular, has never had that kind of leadership. Now, we can argue that there's some ethical things that really bother me about that. Sure. And I don't agree with a lot of it. Yeah. But, he's tasked with that, and that's what he did.
The SEC is out to destroy all because of the quote unquote alliance, which was targeted right at the strength in the SEC and a little side of it, the Big 12. So when they threw the target out there that said these three conferences are going to bind together their strength to offset the strength that's in the SEC, that day the SEC Sankey got hungry. He's like, I'm not going to be passive anymore on this stuff. I guarantee you that had to be a big determining factor in what happened.
Maybe. And that alliance was all just words. Nothing happened from that.
I know, but it's a threat. It was an open threat. They did what they do. They had that little the what was it?
Little Zoom call.
They had a Zoom call, and they talked about how all their conferences are aligned and they're smart, and these are the educational, right? You think Greg Sankey? Do you think the chancellor at Alabama heard that and said, "What? Wait, did I just hear that right? You guys are calling us rednecks? You guys are calling us stupid? You guys are." I guarantee you that put them on the hunt. And that's why I think everything that's happened since that time, last 3 years, has been SEC-esque. The only thing that broke that up is Fox helping the Big Ten out. So that's where we are. We got a question for you, Vince.
Oh, great.
Does the addition of Berkeley, Stanford, and SMU with an 11-14 vote show loyalty of the other members to stay in the ACC? And I will note those three schools cannot vote until August 2nd next year.
That's correct. And does it show a show of loyalty of the other members? I think it shows a sign of understanding what's about to happen, right? If the conference is going to be viable, they have to have members. And I do believe wholeheartedly that Florida State, again, is not going to be in the conference long term. I also believe that the other major football programs are also looking to get out, regardless of whether they say it out loud or not. I know Florida State's the one that's in the front yapping. I know that. But the other ones are not happy either. So whether you're talking about Clemson, Miami, UNC, even, they know that eventually those teams are going to leave. Florida State said it out loud. They have to have teams to fill those spots. So I think it's more of trying to solidify their future, the ACC's future, but understanding that it's not going to include the football powers.
Very fair. Moa, do you want to add to that?
You mean you don't think SMU is a football power?
Well, yeah. So I don't want to couch that. I mean, I don't follow them. I know that they have a rabid fan base, and I know that they're committed monetarily.
Yeah.
So, and again, being in a Power 5 league would help them out tremendously. Now we can argue whether the ACC is a Power 5 or if there's even a Power 5 even anymore at all. We all know that's probably not the case. But SMU, I've not, they could be for sure. Absolutely.
Everybody hopes once they get their ticket punched that the increase in exposure, media money, they'll all rise to the occasion, right? Every school that's moved up has that hope, including BYU and UCF. Everybody has that hope out there that you get raised up, you're going to turn out like a Utah and not like a team that moved like a Nebraska that's been in the dumps. There's cautionary tales all over the place, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
A good question, not a comment. It's more of a comment to you. Shonsky says Florida State isn't going anywhere, so they could call 1-800-CRYBABY and send them some bikinis. Read all the rules involved in the one about players and coaches not being available. What's your take to that?
Yeah. In the bulleted list of things that the committee takes into effect or takes into account, that is there. There's no doubt. And they avoided talking about all the other bullet points. So, I mean, you tell me. They were already the media partner, the ACC's media partner, in quotes, was already setting the stage before Jordan Travis even got hurt.
Really? That far
Sure.
ago, you think? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You look at some of the you look at some of the college game day stuff in mid October, and they're already talking about the reasons why Florida State should not be in the top 4.
Man, that is tough. That is really tough to take in. Let's go. Go ahead. Moen, did you want to say anything to that?
No,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, awesome.
I concur.
Let's see. Let me get to some other questions here, or comments at least. Devil Frog says all two SMU fans are stoked. So you take that.
I have
for what it's worth.
I have no beef with them.
It's not.
I don't really have any
Right.
beef with anybody.
Yeah. You got to realize this is a mostly Big 12 fan base, so you're going to get a lot of that stuff here. We got Hall of Fame college football. Jason is in the house. He's got a comment here. He says, the only bullet point that you have to look at is, are they one of the 4 best? What do you say to that?
Tell me what best means. That's what I say to that.
Jason, I will give you an invite. You can come in here and you can talk directly to Vince. Give me 1 second, guys. Everybody be patient with me. Jason, I'm gonna DM you the link. Let's see here. Jason's a very busy guy. He has his own show. Been trying to track him down all day. He's been doing other stuff, so I didn't get a chance to get him before the show. But there you go, Jason. I just posted the DM link. Join us, and we'll have a conversation about it, because I know you have strong opinions. In the meantime, let me get to a few other things. Let's see. Rock Chalk says death penalty ended SMU, at least the original SMU. That's true. He also says money won't save them. Yeah, I don't know. Time will tell, I think. Raider Vision says at Dr. Detroit, sorry, 100 million. I believe 100 million was the original estimate for how much they were going to end up paying in total. Do you know what that final number ended up being, Vince?
For Florida State, I think
Yeah.
it's $120 million exit fee only.
Okay.
That's just to get it, to get the ball rolling. The
Okay.
real problem, if that was all it would take, we would already be out. That
Okay.
money is already available.
All right.
The problem is the media rights.
Yeah, and let's quickly talk about the media rights. It's an education everybody needs, and you come here for an education. So, Jason, I'm going to bring you on, but don't say anything for a second. I got to catch everybody up. The media rights for the ACC are unique. Why they're different is because they're split off differently. The school's actually contracted with ESPN, not the conference.
Right.
So the media money, and I'm saying this to all the people who don't understand realignment, because I've done this now for over a year. Bob Thompson's 201 course I took in realignment management. I'm still waiting for my diploma, by the way. Anyway, what it works is the ACC has two contracts. There's the ACC contract, and that's the one people have talked about, blowing up voting, blowing up the conference, and they'll have that weight taken off their back. That may or may not be true. Even that might have questions to it. But the other part of it is you still have sold off all your home game rights to ESPN as an individual school. So Florida State has two contracts to try to get out of if they go to the Big Ten. And Moen will tell you that the Big Ten will leverage for them and give them the money to do this. Those two costs are the ACC exit fee, and then it's the ESPN contract that has been valued up to $250 million over the next 13 years. So everybody just keep that in mind when you're talking about blowing up the ACC. Sure, get rid of it. That doesn't get rid of this $250 million, possibly $500 million debt that actually is with ESPN.
Yeah,
Right,
except that just like the Big 12 though is concerned that, I mean, Texas and Oklahoma didn't end up paying like $100 million extra that they were going to pay.
No, it can be negotiated out. It's true.
Yeah. So
but
I don't think
if
it's as big a deal. I don't think
if
it's
you're
as
Boston
big a
College, if you're ESPN, are you going to walk away from that money? They're struggling right now.
And probably not, except for if they can keep them in the SEC or something like that. Then I think that all that's negotiable. If you move Florida State into the SEC, then it's no harm, no foul, right? I mean,
for ESPN, that's true. Yeah, because they're paying themselves. That's
Correct.
absolutely true. They could do a reduced money and everything else. The problem is the Big Ten's out there lurking.
Sure,
like a great
of course.
white shark.
Yeah. I think that's where that's when it goes to court, and nobody wants to do that. But my question would be, I would ask if you think that's correct. There, I mean, you're there at Florida State, you're on the ground, so.
I mean, first of all, the media rights is probably upwards more of 400 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's a significant chunk of money, right? And,
yeah.
And as we've already stated, Florida State doesn't have old money yet.
Right.
It's growing, it's growing all the time, but we don't have oil money to throw at a problem, So it's something that eventually is going to happen, and I think it will get negotiated down. One of the things that people are talking about right now, and I think could be significant, is if you can prove to some degree that your media partner in their efforts damaged your financial prospects, you have the opportunity, maybe not to get out of things scot-free,
contract,
but to have, you know what? We'll just forget all this happened and we'll agree to this amount of money. Because that's what ESPN did. They damaged Florida State's financial, and that's why you've seen some political figures in Florida reference the economics of the result of that decision to the state of Florida, not just to Florida State.
Yeah, that's very fair.
I feel like it was a predatory deal. You know what I mean? I think it was predatory on the, and I think you can at least argue that, right? If you're Clemson, FSU, these teams that are trying to desperately to get out, because you know that you're going to be financially behind the 8 ball, right? If it lasts 2, 3, 4 years, and you're $50 million behind for 4 years, that's $150 million, or $200 million.
Yeah,
All right.
and
Go ahead.
if you want to compare it to Oklahoma and Texas getting out,
Yeah.
their deals were closer to being
It was
done.
1 year left. It was 1 year left. Yeah, I get that.
The ACC,
Still a lot of money.
basically, there's no doubt. The ACC basically sold their soul to a ridiculous deal, and the network is not going to budge. They've got a sweet deal right now, and they are not going to budge. So hopefully something comes out of that financial damages thing, but you never know. I mean, whenever you get politicians involved with things like this, it's a lot of words and not much else.
Yeah, that governor's statement I thought was pretty toothless. I mean,
Yeah.
how many bullet points does it take to say, give me all your documents, all your emails, all your phone records, all your text messages? What was that listed like 8 times? Like, people are stupid, didn't know what the first listing meant. It's just
Right.
ridiculous. It's not enforceable anyway. There's nothing he can do. Blaze Barstow, $1.99 super chat says the Alliance stopped the expanded playoff. Well, the group of conferences got together to drop that. I wouldn't blame it on the Alliance by itself. I think just they couldn't all play in the same sandpit. That was the problem. Okay, let's get to what we brought Jason on to do. By the way, Jason, welcome to the show.
I get to come be the villain today.
No, be the villain.
Hey, look,
I'm happy to do it.
I don't have popcorn here, but I'm going to be entertained a little bit. You guys just play nice and we'll be okay.
No,
All right. So the original premise was, does FSU, right? Jason, let me get this right. Does FSU deserve to be in the Final Four? Do I have that right?
I think the deserve and best is the distinguishing words. It's are you one of the 4 best is my question.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been asked that a lot. I mean, a lot.
Sure.
And my response is always, tell me how we determine who the best team is.
Well, I think that there's a lot of ways that you determine who the best team is. I think you beat LSU. I think that the ACC itself wasn't great. Your strength of schedule was 55th. If you look at Alabama, they're 5th. They have the best win of the season, beating Georgia, the number 1 team in the country. Back-to-back champs. I know that the other years don't have anything to do with it, but they were basically already 12-0 for the season. So and I get it. 13-0. Listen, I'm not even saying that I think it's great that, and to be honest with you, I'm a fan of Florida State, and I was always a big fan of Bobby Bowden. I think that what happened with Jimbo is ridiculous. In the end, I don't think they're one of the 4 best teams without Jordan Travis. I just don't. I don't think that I think it was, do you beat LSU without Jordan Travis? I say you don't. Do you beat I mean, look, I understand that you guys beat Florida. That's a rivalry game, so I get that. But then the Louisville game was, you know what I mean? And I get it. You'll have at least your backup. But to me, I love the defense. I think there's not enough offense for you to beat. Well, I don't think that you're going to come close to Georgia, and they're not it. That's just but that's an opinion. So, but that's where I'm at on it is, can you tell me unequivocally that you are one of the 4 best teams now? And I think that that's where the subjective part is. That's the committee's thing. It's definitely subjective, but I think that when you saw the ratings from last year's CFP, and that's what this is all about, is money. And TCU was, they beat Michigan because, Harbaugh did a Harbaugh. But look at what happened in the championship game. Who the hell watched that for very long? It was ugly. You know what I mean? I know I did, but but we're nuts, I don't know. That's just my question to you.
Do I think Florida State's one of the 4 best teams? When January 1st rolls around and this defense it's an elite defense. if you have any other opinion other than that, then, watch them play, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's
Watch
an
them
elite
play.
defense. I agree.
They're
with
an
you.
elite okay, so they're going to be in any game. When you can, when you have a defense that plays like they do, you have a chance in every game. And how much offense do you need for that? That's a question for sure. I had a lot of people. Let me answer the question. Yes, I think they're one of the 4 best teams.
Okay.
And I think on January 1st, after this staff, and Mike Norvell is one of the greatest young offensive minds that are out there. He finds a way to score points. Even with, you look at his first few years with us, he found ways to score points. He just didn't have the horses, right? By January 1st, when you've got your backup quarterback with the defense playing the way it is, I would say Florida State is one of the 4 best teams.
Isn't the counter argument to that Iowa would be too? Because they have the same struggle. Their defense is fantastic.
They're top 5 defense. They're trash
they're
offense.
top 2 defense. Their
How many
defense
games
is so good.
How many games have they
It's
lost?
different playing in the Big Ten that it's
They lost
you got a lot of
two plus the championship game.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they haven't had a quarterback all season. Florida State's had a quarterback for, what was it, 8 games?
Well, more than that, like 10 games, right?
10 games,
I'm not arguing one side or the other. I'm just stating we do have an exemplar out there in Iowa that would make the same argument that, hey, in 4 weeks we could game plan something and put something together to, challenge for that win.
And had they beaten Michigan and was a conference champion, I'd probably say, yeah, hey, give them a shot, right? But they're not a conference champion.
No,
Right.
they wouldn't have been in though. They wouldn't have been in. They would have already had 2 losses. So they in one of those losses being Minnesota. But I get where you're going with that. I would tell you that that's even debatable though with that defense. It's a great defense at Iowa, but the Big Ten has a couple of programs that are going to put up big numbers offensively. You know what I mean? You're talking Ohio State, maybe Wisconsin. You know what I mean? And then, Michigan can kind of run over you and run up the score a little bit, but they're not one of those type of offenses that, they're going to put up points no matter what. You know what I mean? And you don't see a ton of that. It just doesn't play as well in the Big Ten, right? That's kind of the way it feels like anyway.
Yeah, everybody said that, Louisville with Jeff Brom as the coach, who had been scoring a lot.
I like Jeff Brom, but I also think that Louisville was not as good though.
Okay. That's fair, but you can only go by the stats that teams have.
Sure.
And if we look at that and go, and a lot of people thought that there was no way Florida State was going to win that game because they wouldn't be able to keep up in terms of the scoreboard. But you know what? Teams are built more than just around offense.
Okay. How much offense do you need though? If you're looking at, let's say you take out Alabama and you put FSU in, that leaves you with Texas, which is going to put up points. You're going to need points there. They average over 30 a game. And let's say you can drop them down to like 24, right? That means you need more than 24 to win. Mm-hmm. Do you know that with your backup quarterback, and Texas also has one of those elite defenses? Mm-hmm. So do you beat them? I don't think that you beat Georgia. Same thing. Just same reason I'm saying that. Same with Michigan, another elite defense. They're going to put up 24 to 30 points probably as well. Then you've got Washington. You better have one of the best secondaries in the world to touch those guys. And, look, I think they're going to go out and beat Texas because that's where Texas is not great, is in the secondary. Yeah. They're great in the trenches, but they're not great in the secondary. My thing is I just feel like with Jordan Travis, I think that all that's in play. And I get it that Mike Norvell's one of the better offensive minds in the country. That's clear. He was at Tulsa. When he was at Tulsa, everybody was like, wow, this guy's got it. A lot of respect for him. Oklahoma played him last year. I thought that, I like Florida State. I do. And I think that It's a shame that what happened, but I also think that if you want the best 4 teams, I don't think it's unequivocal that you can say that they're one of the best 4 teams, and I don't have a huge issue with them not being in the dance. I don't.
Yeah,
I also
that's
wouldn't
fine.
have a big problem if Washington hadn't made it in, or Michigan, because I think that Georgia belongs in the playoff. I think that they're clearly one of the best 4 teams.
And if you want to, take that a little step further, Florida State is not, not deemed to be, good enough to play for the title, but yet the committee slots them ahead of Georgia. What does that mean?
What do you mean? Say that
Florida
again?
State's 5th and Georgia's 6th.
In this latest re-ranking.
Yeah. I think that well, here's the thing I'm going to say about the committee. Here's what I'm going to say about the committee is that they use their whatever their justification is for. I think that they were completely enamored with Texas. There was somebody that just asked the question, so you're leaving Alabama out after piping Georgia. I didn't say necessarily I would leave out Alabama. I'm saying I would leave out Texas because I think that Alabama's a different football team than they were when they played Texas earlier in the year. Now, and they have the best win of the season.
Yeah,
that's
I don't have any problem with Alabama. I think they're a really good team. I do. And I think they're better now than they were when they lost by 10 points at home to Texas. Losses have to matter. Wins and losses have to matter.
Sure. And I get that part too. But what I'm saying is if I'm picking my 4 best teams, I would tell you my 4 best teams are Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, and
has to be Washington. Has to be
Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, probably Texas. I think is the 4th best team.
Washington's going to beat Texas.
I think that's a good matchup for Washington. I think it's a good matchup for Washington.
Okay, so if you're projecting, let's do the whole thing. Go all the way out and say I think Washington's going to be.
I think it's a good matchup for Washington. I don't know that there's another good matchup for Washington though.
I don't know.
Defensively.
How much Washington did you watch this season, Jason?
A lot.
Okay, well, Penix beat all kinds of teams.
Unbelievable.
He beat Oregon twice.
Come on, Nathan. There was freaking 3 or 4 games in the middle towards the back end of the season where he looked bad.
Auburn and Alabama, Georgia and Georgia Tech. Come on, Oklahoma had their own. BYU had them on the road.
They all had some bad games, but I'm telling you, the Arizona State game was a pick 6 away from freaking losing it.
Arizona State was their stretch game. That was their stretch game. Arizona turned out to be, they might be a top 10 team. If they had 2 more weeks, Arizona is very, very good. So all I'm saying is you could make this argument about 6 or 7 teams in the top 8 or 9. So to be definitive, I think it's okay for all 4 of us to be definitive. Say everybody do their definitive 4 right now.
I just told you that my 4 didn't include Washington.
I know, and I'm trying to see who you put there instead is Texas. And I think that's a bias.
I hate Texas. What do you mean?
I think you got it. I think there's got to be some reason why you're not putting Washington in there.
I just told you what it was. You didn't want to hear it.
Sorry, say it again.
I just said Michael Penix did not look great for a lot of the last half of the season. He looked good against Oregon twice.
Right.
He didn't look great against USC. He looked awful against Arizona State.
Who is the 4th?
I told you Texas. I would have. If it was me, it would be Michigan. It would be Michigan, Bama, and Georgia, and Texas. That would be my 4. The teams that I think are the 4 best. Now, again, it's subjective. You can say whatever you want to that.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, it was an ask for everybody. Mine is Washington, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama. Moen, what's yours?
Well, one, I would start off that I think if we're going to say 4 best, that the committee has to show consistency in picking the 4 best.
I agree with that.
I don't think we've had a 4 best in the history of the CFP. It's
been very, very.
So I mean, I think it's a bad argument for them to make now that we're going to pick 4 best.
I agree.
Well, they still didn't get the 4 best if you listen to a lot of people's opinion, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people, they still haven't got the 4 best. I mean, a lot of people would tell you Michigan shouldn't even be involved in it because of the cheating scandal. I'm pretty sure that's probably where you stand, Moen. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people do, but I'm saying that the only way you can say for sure that anybody belongs is if you think they're one of the 4 best. And apparently this committee did not believe that. Now, let me just say this one last thing about it. Is in love with Texas as they are for beating Alabama in freaking week 2, you know, when Alabama was not near what they are now. They didn't give Oklahoma any love for the New Year's Six Bowl, beating 2 conference champions, one of which is Texas, and the other will be in SMU. They don't get a New Year's Six invite, you know. So what is it? Do you really love Texas that much and for beating Alabama, or do you not? Because if Oklahoma beat Texas, then how can they not be in there in front of Oregon, who doesn't have a top 25 win?
Yeah, it's all transitory wins. Moen, you didn't answer the question. Who are you?
I'll answer it now. I just wanted to put that point out there. I've been quiet for a while, and I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
My 4 best, I would put Michigan number 1, Washington number 2, Texas number 3, and I would put Florida State number 4. And I know what Jason's going to say, but I think that defense is probably the best defense I've seen this year. I know the Louisville game was ugly looking, but I just think Florida State's defense is such an elite defense that, yeah, by the time January 1st rolls around, you could get your backup quarterback to get you 17 to 21 points, and that defense can hold a team to 13 to 14 points. I mean,
they're going to beat Georgia?
I think they would. I think they could. I think it's a possibility. That defense is really good. Defense wins championships. If they could get their backup quarterback up to speed, I think they could.
All right, go ahead, Vince.
It's simple for me. Well, it's not simple, but it's Michigan, Washington, and you can flip-flop Texas and Florida State. Either way is fine. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, we're going to get to play Georgia.
No.
Unfortunately, though, those aren't going to be
the
teams that we would expect to play.
Right.
There's going to be opt-outs on both teams.
Sure.
And who knows what's going to happen. And so both Florida State and Georgia are in no-win situations in that game. You can win that game, and they're going to say, you know, Georgia didn't care to be there.
Right.
And then if Florida State loses the game, it's going to be, we told you so.
Right. Exactly.
So it's, and I don't want to diminish it, because in the old days, you get to go to the Orange Bowl. You're like, man, this is amazing.
Yep.
And the pageant has ruined all that.
Yep.
But anyway, those are the 4 that I think, and just going back to what we've already said, the only way you know if one team is better than another is when you play them.
Fair enough.
Yep, agreed. Raider Vision, one of our paid members, says the problem is it's all subjective, and that's the problem exactly. This brings me to another point. What do you guys think about using AI publishing what the formula will be, very transparent, and letting AI pick the teams? Take the subjective out of it.
It's kind of like the BCS system.
It's like an enhanced.
Computers were picking it. They had an algorithm, and that was what happened.
AI is a little different. It's just well,
what do you mean by it? So it would just be like simulated games, and that's how they pick it?
There's probably 30 or 40 different measurement sticks they could put in there. Yeah. And everybody would have to sign off on it. It couldn't just be 2 or 3 conferences that said, oh, we're breaking away and this is what we're doing. I'm talking about everybody would have to sign off for it. It could be you could call it a BCS Rich 2.0, but it's actually AI picking the games.
You could call it Chat CFP.
There you go. Chat GPT. There you go. What do you guys think about that? Moen, what do you think about that?
I agree with that. I thought I said this last night. I think the computers have to play a little more role in this, simply because it's subjective. Human eyeballs are going to make human decisions, and that includes human error.
Yeah, but the only problem with the computers, as we know them from the BCS, was that was all. A lot of that had to do with people that like the AP poll. I don't know anybody that thinks the AP or the coaches poll is worth a crap, because first off, which college football coach is watching college football throughout the country to be able to rate the top 25 teams? It's all based on what's on the side of the helmet. Right. And then college football as a reporter and who's covered college football, and, you know, for a long time, I can tell you that most of the guys that cover are beat writers for, I don't care where it is. They don't watch it either. They watch the team that they cover.
Yep.
They're in, I mean, look, you can sit there and look at all the, it's just a simple thing. You can sit there and look at all the little box scores and stats and whatever and think you know what happened in a football game and who's better than who. But if you don't watch football week to week and all the teams, then you end up with a bunch of guys voting for it that's full of crap. You know what I mean? They're just based on what everybody's voting. I think the same thing's going on with the Heisman Trophy, but I think that you would need to, if you're going to do some kind of a AI thing where they're like simulating it based on certain parameters, and they're simulating, you know, 50 games between all of them, and, you know, whatever your percentage is comes up with that. Okay. I mean, it's got to be better than people sitting around deciding, twisting their mustache. You know what I mean? It's got to be. I don't know.
What do you think, Vince?
I mean, the AP poll and the coaches poll and whatever they were called long ago is the way we determine the champion. So again, I go back to all the champions we've had since the dawn of time are subjective championships. All of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the BCS computer thing still had a human component in it because it took into account those polls.
It did. Yep.
And again, I go back to the only way you're going to have a true national champion is if you have teams playing on the field. And the only way you can do that is you have a manageable number of teams.
Yeah, 16 or 12. I think 16 is the final number in 2026. That's my betting favorite right now.
And if I'm smiling a lot, it's because I'm watching the chat go by, and there's some funny things that have popped up in here. So it kind of made me laugh a little bit.
Tell me which one. I'll bring it up. Is there one in particular?
Yeah, the Cleveland Rock says can't stand FSU or the tomahawk chop.
I love that. I was a Braves fan a long time ago.
There's, of course, we love it, right? And we love it for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons we love it is because everyone else hates it.
Yes.
There you go.
Right.
Mississippi State has their cowbells.
The freaking cowbells and the cock, the cock call in freaking South Carolina. Oh.
Right.
When the Noles played Florida, the marching chiefs, there was somebody with a clicker. They played the war chant 60 plus times during that game.
Really? Holy cow.
And it was much to the chagrin of people in orange and blue.
Very interesting. Sergeant Pickles, one of our paid members. Thanks for being here, Pickles. Says, Jason, the SEC bias is saying they have all these ranked wins over mid-level SEC teams that are not good. Auburn needed a fourth cupcake to make a bowl. And Auburn, the flip side of that, Auburn had Alabama on the ropes and should have closed out the deal.
Yeah, and they lost to New Mexico State. That's not supposed to happen either.
Yeah.
I think every conference is top heavy. Let's not get it crazy. Every conference is top heavy, and that includes the SEC. I think when you get to the mid, I think the mid versus the problem is that you end up having the mid versus the top of some conferences. Like for instance, you know, this talk about the ACC is 6-4 against the SEC. Okay, five of those 6 wins were two against South Carolina, one against Vanderbilt, one against Florida, and one against A&M. These are not
LSU and one against LSU.
The one was against LSU. I said 5 of the 6.
Okay,
the LSU one, I'm good with that. I mean, you know, and that's Florida State's. But then Florida State also beat Florida. Which is a rivalry game, so I'm good with that one too. But I'm saying 5 out of the 6 were not up against top level SEC teams. And everybody beats A&M. Everybody beats Vandy and freaking South Carolina this year too. Good. I mean, if we're gonna put, if you got to actually have to where the mids are playing the mids and the tops are playing the tops and blah 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 blah, which you'll never get, right? But that's why I don't care about that stat. I don't care about it. It what does it matter?
But that's a stat at least, right? Because
I mean, who doesn't beat Vandy though?
But the problem with the opposite of that is, what do we hear all the time about how the SEC is the most dominant conference year after year after year? But then when you show them that they're not, then that stat's not good enough, right? So, you know, and I don't have any problem with.
I mean, 5 out of 6 of them are against the bottom half at best, the bottom half of the league.
You can only play the teams that are on your schedule.
I agree
you
with
can't
that.
help that when you schedule them, you know, obviously the Florida game is scheduled annually, right? But the LSU game was scheduled years and years and years ago, right? So by the time you get to play these teams, maybe they were good at one point and now they're not. I guarantee you that there were some teams that when they scheduled Florida State as an out of conference team, they were worried about that. But then Florida State went through a downturn. They got really lucky in that moment because Florida State wasn't doing so well. You can only play the teams that are on your schedule.
I mean, that's been the trouble throughout time. That's not a new problem.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you look at Georgia this year, Oklahoma and Georgia were supposed to play in the non-conference schedule. It got pulled because of the move to it, you know, moving up. The move for Oklahoma and
SEC
Texas
move. Yeah.
getting moved up. They pulled the game. That would have helped. You know, if Georgia wins that game or Oklahoma wins that game, that looks really good on their end of season deal, right? Nobody would have thought anything about leaving Georgia in or whatever. Had they won the game against Oklahoma, then they get beat by Alabama at the end of the year. I think that helps them tremendously. The fact that you have to scramble and put in somebody like Oklahoma ended up putting in what was it, Arkansas State. Yeah, Arkansas State. You know, you know what I mean? That next year they get, but it is what it is. You get who you get. I agree with everybody that says the talk about the SEC playing 8 conference games. I think that changes starting next year. But I also think that there's one other argument that I would make about this whole 14 playoff is this would already be a 12-team playoff if it wasn't for the alliance.
Right. Well, there's lots of people. Yeah, there were a lot. But the alliance was a major contributing factor.
That was the vote. It was going to happen.
Right. But why was the alliance formed, Jason?
What, because Oklahoma and Texas were going
because Oklahoma and Texas went to the SEC, and Greg Sankey had basically wrote the playoff thing to benefit the SEC more, knowing that Texas and Oklahoma were coming in. He wrote it
with Swarbrick of Notre Dame,
and Bob Bowlesby was in the room too.
Right. So
and it was in the rules. It would have benefited the SEC substantially more than every other conference in college football.
Look at the top 12 teams right now and go ahead and put the conferences next to their names and see where those teams lie.
Yeah, which team would you say doesn't belong in the top 12 though?
The only one that's in the top 12 that's not in the Big 10 or eventually in the Big 10 or eventually in the SEC is Florida State. Florida State is an ointment, a fly in the ointment. They just are. If the 12-team playoff this year, with those teams being in their go forward leagues, not the one they're in now, would be 11 of them would be from the Power 2. That's a problem.
Let me get this list up here so we all are talking about the same thing. Just a second. So I want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, so we're not guessing. Let me get back here. Sorry.
I think there's certainly with the television networks being in charge of all of this is the whole.
Sure.
You know, it's never going to be fair based on that.
Bit of a different argument there too as well. Okay, let me bring this up here. Let me take this banner out.
Yeah, pull up the CFP one.
So this is the one that's current. This is brand new.
Well, that's
the AP though.
Well,
CFP ranking.
I actually put in CFP in the search. Sorry, I don't know where that went. I did ask college football playoff top 25. Let me see if I can find the right one. Only lists the AP. Is that it? Let's just
College
see.
football rankings. It's
College
There you
football
go.
playoff right
That's it.
there.
You're there.
So there, and it starts with Michigan, and you have your Washington, Texas. But as you go down here, these are all big in SEC schools. Florida State's the first breakthrough that isn't. And then you go a ways, and then you get to Oklahoma, which is now Oklahoma doesn't count. So next one is Arizona. So you drop from 5 to 14. Everybody else is in those two conferences. So,
they will be in those two conferences, but
Well,
the
that's
truth
what I'm-
is that's not the case right now.
yeah,
Yeah,
but they're,
yeah.
they're kind of being treated that way, though, Jason. They're kind of being treated like they're on their way to those two conferences, I believe.
Right, but
Again,
the
I
Big
don't-
Ten has as much to do with that as the SEC does.
I don't want to indicate
I'm not
that.
assigning that like ownership at all. I'm just sort of projecting. I think those schools.
But I
are
mean,
being
the
treated like Oklahoma.
conversation we're having is the SEC, the SEC, the SEC. Nobody's talking about the Big Ten, and with the alliance, the Big Ten put them in the alliance, and then went and poached UCLA,
Yeah,
and USC.
The Big Ten is not. The Big Ten is not. They're not out of it either. They take just as much blame. We just happen to be talking about the SEC because it's Alabama and Georgia that jumped Florida State. Sorry, Texas and Alabama that jumped Florida State. That's the only reason we're talking about the SEC right now.
Yeah,
I would prefer we threw Michigan out. Let's take Michigan out of there. They've been cheating. That's a good question. If Michigan's out, Jason, do you put FSU in then? Or is it Georgia?
It would be. I want Georgia in. So I mean, if we've got this one right now, anybody that comes out has got to be Georgia for me.
Yep. And so, what
Florida
we're
State
saying
gets
here,
screwed another stage.
what we're saying here is losses don't matter. That's what we're saying.
Or
Losing
lose
games
early.
doesn't matter.
Sure.
That's not what I'm saying. All wins and losses aren't created equal, is what I'm saying.
You can only play the teams that are on your schedule.
I know that.
Yeah,
I'm aware of that. But it
The only
doesn't
way-
change. It doesn't change that the strength of the schedule, one versus the other, what is
Strength of schedule, and I, you and I can go back and forth. I go back and forth with people with this all the time. Strength of schedule is also a subjective metric based on the relative understood subjective strength of a league. So we have been dealing, we as a college football fandom have been dealing with certain leagues being ranked higher from the get-go in a particular season just because of the emblem on their jersey.
I think that's true.
So if you want to call a win against,
It's an implied bias, I think.
it's an implied bias.
There's some bias in both the Big Ten and
There's some,
SEC.
but there's also your record in last year, this year, whatever against
Of
the other
course it
leagues
is.
too. It
That's
also has a
true.
lot to do with that
Right.
as well.
But we
Right.
said records against leagues don't matter.
See, this is where I think a computer can resolve all these things. You could put a theorem together, put it in an AI engine, and it will build it for you. It'll run the simulation 1 billion times, and it'll tell you what's the most likely opportunity for somebody to be successful and put them in a ranked order. The only thing that would get past that would be the 5.
There has to be an
champions.
implied bias in there somewhere, though.
They are, of course, there's an implied bias in there. Of course, I'm not taking that out as a thing. I'm adding it. I'm saying that's something else we need to put in there. But the 5, the ones that are guaranteed are the champions, and that's where Florida State's argument right now today holds water. Is if this was next year, it wouldn't matter where Florida
everybody
State was
in
in the rankings.
CFP is a
They would
champion.
be in the top 4.
Everybody in the CFP is a champion, though.
Absolutely are.
They are,
But not
we're just
everybody
short
is undefeated.
Yeah, we're just short one too.
Sure,
We're
that's fair.
short one of them.
But if you're going to tell, but that's where the biggest problem then is that it's been a 14 playoff for too long because you've got 5 power conferences that you
I agree.
can get one of those spots, right?
You're exactly right, Jason. You're exactly
I
right.
mean, that's they built it flawed and
Right.
and we expect it to be fair, and fair isn't really have anything to do with it. Is my thing. It's
There is no
that
fair.
you're never going to not be subjective on it. It's never
Right.
not going to happen, not based upon the way that it is. Now that
That's
you're
right.
in 4 power conferences now, plus the even when you throw in that group of 5 champion that has to
Yeah.
be in the mix of the playoff now,
Yep.
that doesn't help either, because what you've done, and I've said this a bunch of times, is what you've done. And I'm not look, I'm all for inclusion into this thing, but if you want a real champion, it's got to be the best teams. And if they're continuing to do this, and you've got basically 5 still on, and it's not divisible by 5 the amount of teams that
That's
are going
right.
to be in this thing,
Yeah.
you're screwing somebody every time.
You
You're
keep
exactly
saying
right.
best teams.
Yeah, that's
How do you determine how one team is better than another? That's the only way you can do it in sports.
head to head.
You've got to play them.
And
Correct.
we're already dealing with, at the end of the day, this isn't semi-pro football. They are getting NIL money. They are getting other things, but
Lots
they
of
are
it, some
supposed
of
to be
them.
going to class too. So they aren't all that in a bag of chicks to put this into a professional environment. We're not there yet. Maybe one day, but not today. All right, let me get a couple of comments in here. I think these
I
are
don't
really
disagree.
good.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, Vince. I mean,
It's a flawed system. We all know
there's a
that.
flawed
Yeah.
system. That's the
Let's
point I'm trying to make.
but let's call it what it is. It's an
Sean-
invitational.
Shonsky, who I'm not sure who Shonsky's allegiance is to. I thought it was Clemson. Now I think
He's been all over.
Maybe he's Florida State. I don't know, but he's saying somebody please read the criteria to be in the CFP, please, and everyone will understand why Florida State was left out with question marks. He says, and then if Jordan Travis wasn't hurt, they would be in exclamation points. And finally, read the criteria, please. Well, I'm not going to read the criteria on our show tonight. But
Right.
I think all of us have discussed it and know enough about it to tell you that there is language in there to cover teams that have wounded players. They have exception language in for. They have teams that are better placed to be successful language in the contract. They put in all kinds of caveats to give
Right.
them
And
room. Go ahead.
I just want to say this. Nobody's arguing the criteria. We're arguing the consistency.
Exactly.
There's never been any consistency. If you want to say the 4 best teams, there's never been a playoff where the 4 best teams were in.
How could
It only really came up this season when it looked like the SEC was going to get left out. Then it became about the 4 best. Because you can go back to the first
Absolutely.
college football playoff, Ohio State's 3rd string quarterback.
Yeah.
3rd string, and they leapfrogged TCU and Baylor.
after
the
they
third
won
string.
65-0 against Wisconsin?
It was 59-0.
Yeah.
But still, using that criteria, you could say 1st string quarterback went down, 2nd string quarterback went down. Ohio State has to stay out, and Baylor and
But
TCU.
that's not really. It's not really the same thing, though. We're talking about a guy that had been there in the program for a while. We're not talking about freshman quarterbacks coming in to replace a freaking guy like Jordan Travis. That's not the same thing.
You're right. Jordan Travis is getting replaced by a 2nd string quarterback. JT Barrett was replaced by his 3rd string.
Who had been in the program for how long, Owen?
He'd been there for 2.5 years because he was an early enrollee.
Right. We're
The
talking
Florida
about
State-
2 freshmen at Florida State. Are we not
That's
in the second and
No,
third?
we are not talking about that. The Florida State backup is Tate Rodemaker, who's been in the system for 4 years.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize
So-
that. I
And,
thought he
and
was-
Right.
you know, I'm not going to sit here and say I think Tate Rodemaker could drive the team the way Jordan Travis could. There are certain things that Tate actually has some better potential in, certain throws that he can make that are better than Jordan. He obviously doesn't have Jordan's legs, right? But that's, this is kind of the premise, is that because Tate Rodemaker got hurt in the Florida game, now we've got to play our freshman, who's got worlds of talent. By the way, he looked terrible in that game, but who wouldn't?
Wasn't ready. Yeah.
But who
first starts in the
who wouldn't?
championship of the ACC? I get it.
But Tate Rodemaker would have been playing in the playoff.
No.
Well, let's sort of start to button this up. I can't believe we've gone this long. I knew it was going
It's
to
been
be
fun.
I
It's been
know.
You're the
fun.
one that asked
I
me to
knew-
come in here. I was like,
I
oh,
knew it was
good
going to be
Lord,
a
here we go.
long show. Moen and I talked a little beforehand, but I had no idea we were going to have this much. It's been lively. Jason and Vince, you guys have been awesome. I'm not telling you to go right now. We got 10 minutes or so, but I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know we're starting to wrap this up. There's been so many great comments. I just want to let everybody know there's no way, especially when we have guests, we can get through these comments like Moen did last night with Immaculate. Those shows will be coming up, but sometimes we just have to get content out there. And right now, what we're talking about is really relevant because of what happened to Florida State. I'm going to ask, and this is a question
Sucks
that we
being the
talked
bad guy.
about
Even Coach hates me on my own show.
offline. We talked about this. If two questions, if Jordan Travis's injury had been hidden, like they did Cam's at Utah, do they get in? Because there's always the week to week. He could be coming back by the end of the year. That's the first question. And the second question is, if you go out and blow out Louisville on Saturday, 59-0, does Florida State get that spot? Two questions for you.
The first question about Jordan Travis, whether they should have hidden the injury or whatever, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, if they'd hidden the injury, the significant amount of damage that was done, if they could have hidden that at all.
I'll go back to what I said earlier about they were already laying the groundwork to show that Florida State was not going to be in the top 4 in mid-October before he got hurt.
Okay.
And then the second thing, it actually is a moot point then, right? Because I don't think Florida State could have done anything in the Louisville game to change that.
Jason, what's your opinion about that? Because you're the one arguing the.
I don't know about the laying the groundwork part or whatever. And I don't know that doing an unethical thing like saying that he's not hurt like that, he could come back. Now, would I blame him for it? No. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's the answer. If they win 59-0, I think it might change things. I think they looked really bad against Louisville, and I don't think Louisville looked very good.
The offense looked really bad, just to be clear.
It was a struggle.
No, the defense looked really good. Right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, we watched Louisville give up 30-something points, to Kentucky, Georgia Tech, Miami, Pitt. That's where I just think that, if you go out there and you put up even 35 or whatever like that, that probably would have done a little to help. That being said, I don't know that it changes anybody's mind. I think without Jordan Travis, it's a significantly different team, and I think that that's where ESPN or whoever makes it, you can call it ESPN or the committee has those, that out, that they can take that guy out, they can take you out of there.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
Moen, what do you think about those two things?
Yeah, I don't think you should hide an injury ever. That you got to be upfront and honest
It's
about
slippery
that.
slope, right?
Right. Yeah. That's something a Michigan team would do. What was
And
the second?
Michigan currently sits number 1 in the playoff.
And if FSU had handled Louisville more easily, yeah, that's a tough thing to say. You got to remember when Ohio State beat Wisconsin 59-0. Wisconsin really was terrible that year. That the Big Ten West has been terrible for a long time, and that was a year that they were not very good. But yeah, I think if they'd have had a better performance offensively against Louisville, they'd have probably gotten a little better consideration. But I don't think this committee was leaving an SEC team out. I think that was going to happen regardless.
Okay.
I think in that case that they would have left Texas out. I think the people that think that Texas was going to go in above Alabama, I don't agree. I know that they put them there. I know that they put them there above them in the seedings. I don't think that would have happened. And if Jordan Travis I say all this to say that I think that Jordan Travis is that special, kind of like what Shonsky was saying in there. He's that special that, yeah, I think they're one of the top couple of teams if he's there. You know.
So I have a conspiracy theory. I put it out on Twitter. I mentioned it earlier. I want to bring it up one last time. That
Nathan,
this is all part of a big conspiracy.
I don't need any more conspiracies in my life.
That Florida State worked with the college football playoff group to be put down, get the sympathy vote, so they have enough leverage to leave the ACC and join the SEC.
Did this piss? I just asked you this. I don't care about the conspiracy part, but does this piss off the people at Florida State enough to now you're out?
Exactly
you're
right.
You're leaving the ACC,
there you go.
And you would never join the SEC because of this.
Right.
I said this before you came on, Jason, and that is, there's a lot of bad blood that happened this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of angry people about it. One of our major collectives had a last count that a 50% jump in subscriptions. There is a mobilization going on right now. And what that means in the long run, I don't know. It's a lot of money, but Florida State believes that they deserve better. And they're not afraid to bark about it for sure. But I also believe they're not afraid to do something about it too.
But I guess my real question was, does this mean if they are leaving, is it the Big Ten because they're like, screw ESPN?
I said earlier in the show, I think it's 70% Big Ten. I think the Big Ten wants Florida State. I think if Florida State was, all things being equal and they didn't have this big thing hanging over their head to pay, they'd already be in the Big Ten. Florida State has visions of, research dollars. I mean, that's what Florida State wants to be in terms of a university. Right. There's some old guard that would prefer the SEC because that makes more sense regionally, right? So we're going to see who's going to win that battle. But I think right now it's leaning toward the Big Ten.
Okay.
Very good. All right, well, let's wind this up. I'm going to give you guys a chance to plug your shows since you've been nice to be here tonight. And again, I want to thank both of you for coming in and having this conversation. I think these questions that we've been discussing are really important. And everybody needs to understand that we don't have any answers tonight, but answers will be coming, and everybody will see them soon. So start with you, Vince.
Yeah, thanks. Garnet and Old. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. Like, we're there. We have a live show every Thursday night at 7, and then we do pregame, postgame, sometimes halftime shows. We do live events at local breweries in the Northeast Florida area here, and we also occasionally, Ryan and I, do our own solo shows too throughout the week. So that's Garnet and Old. That's the name of it.
Garnet and Old on YouTube. Follow them. Jason.
Hey, first, thanks for having me, guys, and it was good to get to talk to you, Vince. Like I said, I've been the bad guy all week, so even on my own show. So I appreciate you not beating me up too bad. You can find us at Hall of Fame College Football with Jason and the coach. It's at CFB-pod on YouTube. And then I'm always on Twitter as well. It's at JW_HOF, as you see there. Hall of Fame Media.us, HOFmedia.us is our website. But thanks a lot for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Moen.
Right here at Big 12 Mafia. Hit like, subscribe, comment, become a member, join the family. I'm a capo. You got to be a button, man.
That's right. We're going through some changes on the site. We're going to start doing some naming convention things. The next month is going to be transformative for Big 12 Mafia and Holy Rivals. So we appreciate everybody being here. It's been a fantastic Q&A that we've gone through. Vince, Jason, thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Always answering the phone and talking to me. I don't take that for granted, and I want you guys to know that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me, bud.
Stick around after the show closes, and we'll do a couple post-show things and then be out the door. Everybody else, thanks for being here. I hope you've had fun. That's all we go for. We're not telling you what to think, but we're definitely setting the table for you to decide on your own. Other than that, I'm going to sign out, say bye to everybody. Have a great night, and try to stay out of trouble on the 12 days of Christmas. Bye-bye. Peace.